Live on the Patreon live show, Ask Me Anything for Saturdays. It's going to take me a couple of minutes to get everything wired up and then some questions that should start coming in as I start talking to people. So if you're watching on the rebroadcast or whatever, or if you just happen to somehow manage to be right here at this moment, I'll be back, or I'll start answering questions in a minute or two. So if you want to just skip ahead, that would probably be wise. Always takes a little bit for people to get in here and for me to have something to say that's not me talking about the process of going live, just the way it works. Unfortunately, maybe I can come up with maybe I could schedule these or something. There's something I could do to make this a little bit of a better process. I think that's what I could do. Find the live page, set them up in advance. Let's experiment for that for next week. Okay, I've got it plugged in here. Oh no, I don't want to. Where is it? Even my screen's bugging me. Patreons only publish. There we go. Okay, should be out there for the world to see. All right, it's a Saturday afternoon. I spent the morning working out, playing Injustice. I bought Injustice for my PlayStation 4 yesterday. It was like $6, 6, $7. It was under $10, so it was like a no-brainer. Like, I'm gonna pick that up. That is the price is right for that. So picked that one up, and so played that one this morning, and then yeah, just kind of been letting time pass a little bit. So all right, people are starting to show up. First up, Majestic Demon. Hey, Sean, how are you today? I am doing good. Yeah, I just mentioned I'm spent the morning working out, and then scheduled today's video to be the Mummy trilogy ranked plus the Scorpion King. That'll go up probably before this live broadcast is over. Before we're done, there should be a video up on the main channel. Is the way that seems to be working as of recently. And yeah, worked on my schedule for the next week and played some video games. So there you have it. Got some work done and other stuff too. Majestic Demon, what do you think of the live action Hercules? Do you think that they could improve the animated one by doing a live action version? So, the Hercules movie came out when I was in high school, so I never watched it back in the day. It's from kind of a classic era, but it's not one that has been kind of regarded as much as a classic the way some of the other Disney Renaissance films were. So, um, um, yeah, So I have no nostalgia for it. Hercules himself obviously is prime material for a live action. That's why they've done so many live action TV shows, movies, and everything. The Rock was Hercules a few years back. So I'm not. I've seen it a couple of times, just so when I did my ranking of the Renaissance, and I think at some point in time, like with my nephews or something, I watched it. But it's it's tough for me to have a strong opinion on because I'm not as familiar with it. In general, I want Disney to slow down on this live action remake thing because it's clearly they're leaning into something that's printed money for them, but they're not playing the long game. Like the reason that they have these movies they can remake now is because they did all this original stuff 20 years ago. If right now all you do is Marvel sequels, Star Wars remakes, you can't do that. Like it's a very short-sighted strategy, so you pace it out. That's even like right now, I've got a ton of ideas. Like I'm not doing 7 ideas that I think are just like knock it out of the park ideas in a row. I'm spacing it out a little bit. And so I'm kind of confused by what Disney is doing with it because it just seems so short-sighted to crank so many out every single year. And at a certain point in time, you're just you're competing with yourself. And given their box office numbers last year, it worked for them, but they're just they played all their cards last year. They did the Lion King, they ended the Infinity Saga, and they ended the Skywalker Saga. So I don't know if I had too many specifics things in them. Gamerman X, hey Sean, I learned something new every week, but these live streams, I will wait 3 to 5 minutes between some of my questions, not put in 10 at once. That's appreciated. These have, a Patreon page has grown a lot over the last, since December. I mean, it's doubled in size since December. And so, I've always kind of said up until, really even up until kind of now, hey, just ask your questions, let's go for it. It's normally been about 10 people in here. And a lot of them kind of here every single week, and so there's kind of a pace to it. But there's a lot of new people, and you have little things you learn, you grow, and but yeah, I mean, I want to answer everybody's questions, but yeah, if you can pace those out, that's greatly appreciated. I mean, I was going to say something a little bit at the beginning, is that not in any sort of mean way. You didn't do anything wrong. That's what I told you to do. Ask your questions. But when you ask a bunch in a row, then it creates a scenario where I'm just talking to you as other people, and I want as much as I can kind of space that out. But you already acknowledged that, so we're all good. Adarsh, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. What's your favorite Robin Hood movie? Without question, no close second or anything. The Kevin Costner one, Prince of Thieves, came out when I was about 10 years old. And so I was like the perfect age to have my mom be like, you can go see this more adult movie that's dark and it's PG-13. And so that's the one I grew up with. And, there's a couple things about it that I think are legitimate criticisms about, Kevin Costner's accent, of course. But beyond that, I think it's got exciting action, fantastic score. Besides Kevin Costner's accent, I think he fits the type of role pretty well. Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham is great. Some people think it's a little bit too dark, but this is kind of what I was used to growing up with. And I'll throw this out there real quick, going back to what I just was talking about with Gamer Man. Everybody, try and space your questions out a little bit. Don't drop like 3 in a row. Like I got 3 in a row here from Rich. I want to answer all your questions, but just try and ask your question, wait for a couple questions to come in, and then ask your next one. So I'm not monopolizing time on one person. Just space it out. I'm not looking to I still want to answer everybody's questions, be here as long as I need to be, but just space it out so everybody's getting a little bit of a shot. Justy Demon, I definitely agree. I was born a year or two after Hercules released. I never watched it until about a year ago. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones that, I'm sure if you grew up watching it, then you have fondness for it and everything. But like when I watched it, I was like, yeah, this doesn't quite have the magic of some of the other ones, or even the ones that I'm not as fond of or haven't watched as much. Almost all the other ones I think had a little bit of a spark, and Hercules was the one that had the least of that for me. I'd never seen Tarzan before either, but I watched Tarzan and I went, this is pretty cool. I watched Hercules and I was like, not really for me. Rich Reviews, which movie are you more excited for? John Wick 4, Bill and Ted 3, or Matrix 4? It's so tough to answer that because they're so different, while all obviously being Keanu Reeves vehicles. The one that I think is the safest bet of those 4 is John Wick 4. But that also makes it the least interesting to me. I know exactly what to expect from John Wick 4 because we have a good idea where the plot's going because of the previous film, the type of action you'll get. So you know what that's going to be. And it'll have amazing action, good world building, pretty straightforward plot. You know what it'll be. Bill and Ted 3 and Matrix 4. Man, who knows what you're going to get with long delayed sequels like that. So it's tough to say. I'm most excited for. Here's the deal: if all 3 of them are magically available to me tonight, I'm going to go see The Matrix 4 because it's the most interesting to me. As a betting man, the odds are that one could be the weakest of the bunch. I'm not going because I think it'll be the best. I'm going because it's the most interesting to me. Rich Reviews, how many drive-in theaters are in Texas? How many are open? I have no clue. I have no idea. Some sort of like portable drive-in theater opened here in the town that I live in, like a month before, like in February, right before Corona, it opened up. And so I think they started showing stuff again last night. I think they did. And it's all stuff that I'd be right up my alley. I mean, it's like Back to the Future, things like that we could take our kids to. So you'll see me on Instagram or something like that in the near future at a drive-in theater. Rich Reviews, what looks like Lionsgate's moving most of its films to 2021. Yeah, that's what I saw. I saw that it Yeah, they put out their schedule and it's like everything just pushed back a year, which is, that's everything now. David Patterson, I rewatched 1917 this morning, and it is still my third favorite movie of all time. Very cool, very cool. Gamerman, I knew Crisis was doomed when I heard Tom Welling said he only had one scene in Crisis, and I would have had him in 2 episodes. Although I wouldn't suit him up because he's Clark Kent, not Superman. I don't. I mean, I don't think there's any. I mean, I think it highlights everything that was wrong with Crisis to me. That it was entirely stunt cameos. They weren't. Let's see who we can get to write a great plot line. Tom Welling says that he'll do 2 episodes. Oh, awesome! So then, okay, now we'll build our he'll for 2 episodes of it. He's this major piece to it before things are destroyed. It wasn't that. It wasn't like how can we build great stories. It was who can we get to agree to be in a scene? Who can we get to agree to show up for 15 minutes? And so then it all just felt like these just shoestring together scenes tied together by a thread. And yeah, you're reminding me of something heartbreaking to me. Like, not that I think that Smallville's like an amazing show, but it has a very fond place in my heart. And nothing but positive vibes for Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum. Love Michael Rosenbaum's podcast. Whenever Tom Welling's on it, it's great. And my wife and I listen to those all together. A year ago, tomorrow. A year ago tomorrow, I was at Fan Expo Dallas, and they had one of the first Smallville reunions where all of them were there, and I was at it, and I spoke. I did like a little panel, and then it was pretty cool. And then they had Tom Welling, Michael Rosenbaum, Kristen Curick, and I was there in the room, and so I have a picture with Tom Welling, and by that I mean I turned around to a selfie like this with 1,000 people in the room. It's not a real selfie with him or anything, but and so that they finally got him in Arrowverse, but it was just kind of this one scene thing that they promoted in advance. I think that they just shot themselves in the foot with everything about how they handled that. Like if they didn't tell us that Tom Welling was in it, they didn't tell us that. Same thing that they did with the DCEU cameo that they did on the back half. If we didn't know he was in it, and you're just watching it, and then that one scene happened, that would be I don't think I would have complained. But when you announce it, make a big deal of it, and show set photos of the whole deal, and put it in the trailer, and then it's just one scene, like what? Why did we even do this? So if you're going to promote it, I think you have to put him in the suit. You have to do something with it. And for the scene they did, he's just Clark Kent. But the TV show Smallville ended with, let's have him as Superman. Like that, show ends with him ripping the shirt open. But they didn't really do that. They never delivered it. I always thought that they should have done a Metropolis movie. Like a year after Smallville ended, just do like this one little TV movie of him as Superman. Like actually deliver on it. And that's one of the big faults of the show, is that they never really delivered the payoff of the whole, like a 10-year build-up. You have to pay off. Let us see Tom Welling as Superman. And I think it was I don't think he didn't want to do it, I don't think, but I think that they should have had him as Superman in Arrowverse on Supergirl. Because in the storyline, he's 10 years older, and then they cast someone a year younger than the girl playing Supergirl, Melissa. And so I think it's goofy. Like, Tom Welling is the perfect age for it. He absolutely still looks like a big guy that could play Superman. So I would have loved that if they'd done that. Anyway, I'm giving way too long of an answer. We got tons of questions lining up. Gamerman, I recently rewatched, ranked all the episodes of Prime Classic Smallville seasons 1 through 3. It is safe to watch Smallville season 4. Is it anything like Arrow or Heroes season 4? No, not at all. No. Arrow does this. So, I think seasons 4, 5, and 6, I think, are a slump. 6 and 7, I think, were kind of the low point for me. And then, like, 8, 9, and 10, I think they back on it. Some people had already dropped off because they kind of ran out of steam with the Lana and Lex stuff in 6 and 7. And so there's some real weak spots in there. But there's also great stuff. They introduced Green Arrow in season 6, and it was great. I mean, as soon as I saw Green Arrow with Justin Hartley on the show, I was like, man, they should give this guy a show. And they did, they did that years later. different actor playing the character, different continuity, and everything. But they when they started, they did some like a Justice League type episode in season 6. But then there's other things that just weren't. They like really kind of went off the rails with some of the stuff they did, and then it came back. So Smallville was one that went up and down, and I thought the last two were a really, because it became Metropolis. It stopped being in the middle. They didn't know what to do when they graduated high school, and so then they're kind of in Metropolis, they're kind of in Smallville, they're in college, and it was a weird mix. And then they decided to move on from that. And when they moved on from it and they started like moving more towards he's a hero and stuff, it started to get better again. WE, can you rank the X-Men heroes, villains, and final battles? I fully plan to do that. I put out a poll a couple weeks ago asking which rankings people wanted to see for Marvel, and the X-Men heroes ranking was the one that they chose the least. So that slowed down my plans. But I mean, I've got my phone on me. I was mapping out May, and one of those is on there. Actually, what I probably need to do is put up a poll, maybe even today. Put up a poll even today asking which X-Men ranking would you like to see first? And even because of this, if you see it on my community tab, that's why. But you can see it on the 12th. X-Men Heroes is planned. Actually, if you want to get a little tease of what's coming, what I'm planning. So that's very much on my mind to get those X-Men rankings I haven't done. David Patterson, riddle. Clock on your wrist equal 1 dozen synonym to furious, plural of adult male. I absolutely cannot do a riddle while trying to answer questions. I'm not a riddle person in general, but my brain is in answer question mode, so I couldn't even attempt to process on that level. Rich Reviews, thoughts on Ron Howard doing the Cave Rescue movie? So Ron Howard, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good fit. I mean, he did with like Apollo 13 is rescue movie. That was great. And so I think he's one of these guys that he goes back and forth from the big movie, small movie, and great talent. Seems like a nice guy. So yeah, absolutely. I don't know too much about. I don't know what we're referring to, but it sounds fine to me. Gamerman, most of my questions today will be Smallville based because I will be starting season 4 tomorrow. Works well enough for me. Point of reference, I mean, I haven't watched through Smallville in a long time. I think I have all the seasons on. I'm looking at them right now. They're right over there. Actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but let me see. Right. Those are Smallville Blu-ray sets. DVD sets. I think I have the... What do I do? I have final season on Blu-ray. The other ones are just DVD. But anyway, they're right over there. Not that matters to you, but I haven't watched through it in a while, so it's not totally fresh on my mind, so I can't go into a ton of specifics. Rich Reviews, thoughts on David Gordon Green directing the pilot for a possible Hellraiser series? I've never even seen Hellraiser in full. The very first one I watched most of it. I started watching it. I don't even know how. I have no clue how long ago this was, or where it was. If I was married, or like I have no memory of when I watched Hellraiser. But I remember distinct memories of the day that I like sat down to like Hellraiser. This is one of these classic horror franchises I should watch. And it's this odd thing that it's such a distinct memory of watching almost the whole movie, but not watching the whole deal. And is that the Halloween guy? Is that director guy? Pineapple Express and Halloween. Yeah. Sure. I mean, if you're going to get someone to do it, if you want to do it right, get the guy that did those movies. And I was mostly a pretty big fan of his. I was 80% a fan of that movie. I think I gave it like 8 out of 10 on entertainment, but I was also like 80% I really dig this, 20% what were you thinking? It was one of those types of movies. It wasn't just that like, some flaws, but it was literally like 20% of the choices they made. I was like, no, why are you doing this? And then a bunch of other ones, I was like, oh, that was really cool. I really dug that. Gamerman, but not all my questions are on Smallville. 2 weeks ago, I told you how many more seasons I wanted for MCU Netflix. You asked if I had the plot lines. No, but I had ideas for them. I will share with you. Cool. David Madison, I have now watched Goodfellas and Taxi Driver. I loved both, but I thought Goodfellas was an 84% because it had too much narration, but it was still great. Taxi Driver was 98%. I had a conversation with a guy this week, another guy that watched Taxi Driver for the first time this week as well. And I'm not quite sure how old the guy is. I don't know the context of this, but he literally said, I didn't think it was very good. It was like a 6 out of 10. And he said, I know I watched the Joker first, and so that sways my opinion a little bit. But because I watched Joker first, it felt like Taxi Driver was ripping it off. And I was like, I know what you're saying, but phrasing it that way is probably not the best way to phrase it, because you just criticized the movie for something that's obviously not true. And it's just voicing your the bias of which one you watched first, as opposed to like how this actually played out. And so it was a frustrating conversation. I was like, you're as film actually, one of the criticisms that a lot of like cinephiles had of the Joker is that it creates something that makes the original off-putting to a group of people. It introduces a bunch of people to it. And that would be my argument that I would lean into. But there is a percentage that say you give a bad or you either replace the original or you can give a bad impression of the original with the new thing. And in the case of this one, this person says, Taxi Driver, that wasn't very good. Joker was better. I was like, no, don't say that. WWE Anime, name one of your favorite films from every major studio. I mean, Sony Pictures, I'd go Spider-Man, the original one, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That Jumanji remake is pretty great too. I have a lot of positive experiences with Sony Pictures as of recently, actually, because their people that do their press here in Austin, the press screenings it's called Fonz PR, and it's a great PR company. And so I'm like kind of buddies a little bit. Professional buddies, not hang out outside of work, but like they're real friendly, really good staff. And so I have like Sony Pictures. I always, when they have a new press screening, I have a positive experience with those ones. Anyway, this is a little rabbit trail. Walt Disney Studio Pictures. I don't know. There's so obviously they own so much, it's tough to say, but Lion King, because I'll just lean into the Disney part. Paramount Pictures. That weren't the Indiana Jones movies, so I'll go Raiders of the Lost Ark. Universal Pictures, Jurassic Park. 20th Century Fox, Die Hard, and MGM. Did Casino Royale, did that fall under them? They had change of ownership and stuff. So yeah, MGM, I'll go Casino Royale. I was scared on that one. When I read the question, I was like, am I going to be able to pull this off? I think I did. Majestic Demon, when you watch movies in the theaters, do you watch them more as a critic or as an audience member? I mean, I don't really distinguish the two too much. Because I don't like, I started all this as a fan, just like, I just want to talk about from watching movies, my experience. So I don't have too many ways in which I think that there's a distinction when it comes to what I do. I try and have distinguishing things with how I articulate my thoughts, like difference between like, man, I know this was dumb, but I still really dug it. Like I like to have language like that, or I'll, like with The Shining, I'll say I'm just not wired that way. I totally respect where other people are coming from, why they get something out of this, but my brain's not wired that way. And that's trying to distinguish critic and audience member. And I think most critics, I don't think they like the idea of. I think one of the things where I think there's a interesting perception of what movie critics are, like you don't become a movie critic by accident. You do it because you love movies. And there might be certain ones for certain websites where they were a journalism major and that's the only job that they could get. But most people, they got into it because they love movies. And maybe somewhere along the way, you can lose a little bit of that because it does become your job. You do it for so long that there's a spark that gets lost. But in general, like you get into it because that's what you love. David Patterson, I started watching a book on screenwriting. I don't know. Maybe when I finish the sentence, I started watching a book on screenwriting, and the first chapter is about protagonists and it made me realize that Hans Gruber is technically the protagonist of Die Hard. I'd have to know what the argument is for that, because he's the person that proactively does something that sets in motion the story. Um, he's the person that the inciting incident happens when he decides to take over this tower. That's the inciting incident. So he's the one that proactively does that. But I don't know that all protagonist, the definitions of protagonist is the person that sets the story in motion, because stories can be, if the protagonist of Castaway isn't the storm that causes the plane to crash. So I would have to know what the argument is for what the book showed, because you said watching it. I'm not quite sure if you wrote the wrong word or what the context was, but actually tell me, what screenwriting book are you going through? I've tried to go through a bunch of them, and if I haven't gone through that one, I'll actually write it down and check it out myself, maybe, because I need to get more into that. Rich Reviews, did you watch the Parks and Rec Isolation special episode? Not yet. My wife and I just haven't had the moment. Last night we did like a double feature with our kids in our living room, a couple that they had been wanting to watch all week, and so we did that. Comics Man, hey Sean, I just watched Fantastic Four from 2005. It wasn't good, but Chris Evans was hilarious. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to watch early Chris Evans stuff, because prior to a movie called Sunshine, this isn't 100% true, but he did a movie called Sunshine. It's like a space horror film of sorts from Danny Boyle. He was a little bit more of like the frat boy. Like he was the comic relief guy. And then he did Sunshine, where he acted seriously, and he was this Captain America, who's like, obviously a straight-laced character. And so he really kind of veered his career around 10 years ago. But before that, he was kind of like charismatic. He was the fun guy in the cast. And he'd done some comedies and stuff like that. So I knew him from Not Another Teen Movie. That's where I first saw him. So that's like one of these spoof comedies that's like way over the top, raunchy comedy. And then it's like, that guy's going to be Captain America. I don't know about this. And he was Johnny Storm. And I saw Sunshine, and that's when okay, he can act. I'll buy this. I'll give him a shot. And I think I even had some online debates like, man, I don't know about this casting. Like, Not Another Teen Movie, that guy? And they went, check out Sunshine. He's got another side. That's what won me over. If Scoob is big VOD success, do you think it paves the way for more mid-budget movies that don't necessarily need to be huge spectacles? So there's two sides to this. There's the during quarantine question and the after quarantine. I think Trolls already just cleared the way. Every studio is going, okay, if we're not going to piss off theaters, what movies can we drop on VOD? I think every studio is looking at that. Everyone that doesn't need to make $1 billion. And so absolutely, if Scoob also does banana numbers, and it will, I would be shocked if Scoob doesn't easily crush Trolls 2's numbers, because it's Scooby-Doo. And the trailer was better. I mean, I think absolutely Scooby-Doo had better trailers. So I think it's going to crush it. Like, I didn't get Trolls 2. I'm absolutely going to get Scoob. So I think it's going to crush Trolls numbers. And so then everyone's going to be going, what do we need to, what is it okay? What only needs to make $150 million, whatever the number is for them. I think everyone's going to do that. That's part one, during quarantine. The other one is afterwards. And I think the movie theater chains are probably all going to band together, and they're going to be like, no, studios, you can't use coronavirus as a means to leverage really hurting movie theaters. And they're just going to band together and say, anybody that doesn't respect the fact that we need a 2-month window, we're not going to show your movies. And it's going to turn into a war. They'll renegotiate and they'll find something. But I don't know if you saw the news, but AMC and Regal both said, we are not going to show Universal movies, because their CEO publicly said that we're going to start after this is over, when theaters reopen, we're going to start releasing movies in theaters and on VOD at the same time. And I think that I'm going to say, I side with AMC and Regal on this one. Universal either said something stupid, or they're violating long-term negotiations, common practices, and they're trying to throw their weight around they're in the wrong in what they're doing, and they're hurting the theater experience. Now, AMC has no room. They're about to go bankrupt, so they have no room to actually bargain in this one. But I think it's just really messed up for Universal to casually basically break years of practices that way, or announce that so flippantly. Rich reviews. When I watched the one film from Amazon Prime, South by Southwest, that looked interesting, My Darling Vivian and Johnny Cash First Wife. Um, yeah, I haven't watched any of those. I probably should see what's on there. Maybe I don't. I feel like I have enough of a groove and enough of like what I'm trying to do. I just don't. I There's so many things I want to do that there's no specific value to any one thing that I think is on the South by Southwest stuff that's on Amazon to me. Like right now, if my choice was watch some random South by Southwest movie or watch a Bollywood movie, I'd rather watch a Bollywood movie and review it on my channel, because I keep telling people I'm going to do it and I just haven't yet. So I just need to find that window of time to do it. And South by Southwest becomes one more thing that punts that down the line. And so I just keep thinking about that, because I just really would like to, I need to kind of expand my horizons and stuff like that. And I keep saying I'm going to. So like right now is the time to do it. So I don't know if I don't think I'm going to check out any of the South by Southwest stuff. Majestic Demon, I know I told you this during the podcast earlier this week, but I can't believe how good 1917 is. I would agree with Griffin that it's probably the best war film of all time. It's like it just works in and of itself as kind of a just in the moment urgent war film, but it's also the single take aspect to it is just pretty remarkable. That it's quite the achievement in cinema. Richard Reed, so who do you think will blink first, AMC or Universal? Well, I think that it's because it's AMC and Regal, in which case at that point in time Universal are they, do they like, I think it's a lot more likely at this moment in time that Cinemark and whoever else will team with AMC and Regal to get Universal to play, to give up in the game of chicken. They're both driving towards a cliff. What are the odds that we're not going to see Jurassic World 3 in theaters? We're going to see Jurassic World 3 in theaters. So I think that the studio or the theaters are going to band together more so than every I just don't think it's possible that every studio is thinking, how can we screw over movie theaters right now? I just don't think they're thinking that. You've got one studio that said something silly, and then two chains were like, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to call you out on that. And so they look kind of like the jerks in the moment, but if you stop and think about it, just stop and really think about what Universal just did in light of the actual arrangements that they've been doing, negotiating for years. And what was said, like when there's certain things to where they told theater chains, we're only going to release these movies to VOD because we can't put them in theaters. Like it's a short term because of this. And then as soon as it's a success, the CEO says, we're going to keep doing this. That's some BS right there. Like that is not okay. Majestic Demon, which hero from any of the Arrowverse Marvel Netflix shows would you like most to see in the MCU? I think the one that is the most transferable is Daredevil. I think he's the one that has kind of the broader appeal, and Luke Cage as well. It's tough to say, like, are you talking about the actual literal version if you transfer him over? Like Jessica Jones, there's so much sex, drugs, rock and roll, depression, PTSD, rape, that you just can't, that's not really what they're doing in the MCU. And Luke Cage being so tied with her, and there's a lot of sexual content in there to where I just don't know that it transfers over. If you removed that, I think Luke Cage would work on the same level that Daredevil would. And Punisher, of course, obviously is not an easy character to transfer over. And then Iron Fist, I just wasn't very well received, and so it doesn't seem like a very good idea. So I think Daredevil's the safe answer. Likewise, I don't think this is going to happen, but obviously he's a lawyer, so it's pretty easy to move him into the Spider-Man movies on that grounds. Comics Man, do you think the Bad Boys franchise will continue on because the end of the last one kind of built a possible movie? Absolutely. They've hired the screenwriter. Like, it's in the works. It was almost immediately they announced that they were working on the fourth movie. So, um, if you just go through it, the movie teases it. The movie absolutely teases it. They immediately hired a screenwriter on it, so they waited to see what's the opening weekend reaction, and they went, okay, now go do it. So that guy had probably been in the works for a while. They liked the movie, and they went, hey man, as long as we're over these numbers right here, we're gonna go do it. The movie was a big hit, much bigger hit than I was expecting, and it got the best reviews of the franchise. So, I mean, I think it's almost a locked guarantee as long as they can work out the script, because they spent 15 years trying to get this movie made. I mean, it's been in development hell. I just assumed it was going to be crap because they dropped it in November or December. They dropped it in January, and it was such a long delayed development hell. Projects like that for 90s projects and things like that, they're almost always bad, and this one wasn't. It was the best of the franchise, so I think absolutely we're gonna get a quick turnaround on that, or a quicker turnaround. Jonas Diaz, what streaming services do you add your family? Does your family use? Which ones do you immediately recommend that aren't obviously Netflix? So I did a video, I think in January, on streaming services ranked. And basically I did that based off the streaming services that I use. So that video will elaborate much more so than what I can do right now. I do think Netflix is still the king of streaming services. As a family man, as someone that has 3 kids under the age of 10, Disney Plus is a must for us. Even though I own a ton of these, I own all the Marvel movies and all the Star Wars movies, so I already own a ton of that stuff. But it still just seems like a no-brainer to me. I have HBO, but I barely ever use HBO. I use it for the TV shows. Like right now, Westworld's on, so I have it for Westworld. I signed back up for Watchmen, and then when Westworld's over, I'll probably cancel it. I guess I don't know if it's converting to HBO Max. I don't know how all that's working, but I'll do HBO Max. Check that out. Amazon Prime and Hulu, the big holdup for me with each of them is that I think their interface is just terrible. It doesn't make it easy to find stuff. But both of them have great selections on there. But so if you're a family person that you got a bunch of kids, I think that Disney Plus is kind of a no-brainer. If you don't have cable or any way to get kind of regular broadcast television, Hulu's good because it has a lot of network television TV shows on there. So that's like where I watch Lego Masters and stuff like that. And then Amazon Prime does have a great archive. It's just tough to find everything on it. David Patterson, I'm going through some of my favorite movies just to cement the ranking. I'll rewatch Logan after this. Very cool, very cool. Gamerman, my favorite Smallville season so far for me is season 3. My Twitter poll says season 1. Which would you say is the best? I wouldn't because I haven't watched them recent enough. Season 1 through 3 all that's kind of like the prime era of the show. It like, to your earlier question, it does dip with season 4, but it's not like Heroes. It's not like the shows that you mentioned. It's not that. Arrow just kind of went off the rails at a certain point in time, and it never really came back besides a couple blips here and there, where that's not what I would describe about Smallville. And then I think Smallville ended on a really good note. I just wish that they gave us I really wish that they gave us more of payoff to building to Superman. But I think in general, it ended really well with the season that they went with. But I haven't watched beginning to end through those seasons in quite a while. And so then I wouldn't want to offhand say which one I prefer. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, maybe I just don't think I'd want to. I would have a leaning towards the first season, but I just don't even want to heavily say that, really. The Majestic Demon. So I watched The Shining and Doctor Sleep back to back this week, and the story of Doctor Sleep makes more sense to me because I watched Doctor Sleep in the theater without having seen The Shining. Wouldn't recommend doing that. Definitely would recommend watching The Shining before watching Doctor Sleep. That would make that movie make a good bit Yeah, a lot more sense if you watch them in order. David Patterson, Christian Bale, and Hugh Jackman are two of my favorite actors. Hugh Jackman being my favorite, Scarlett Johansson is my favorite actress. The cast of The Prestige is greater than the cast of Endgame. I mean, no, I mean all of Nolan's movies do have fantastic ensembles. So, you know, you're the quantity that you have in Endgame, I think by default beats every movie out there. But I know what you're saying. Rich reviews thoughts on MGM Resorts wanting the host the remainder of the NBA season. I have no thoughts on that because I don't I don't know anything about that, so I don't follow the NBA, so I have no thoughts on it whatsoever. Gamerman, one thing that Man of Steel does better than Smallville is the portrayal of Jor-El. I don't like that Smallville's version of Jor-El is an antagonist. No wonder Clark gave up his powers in Crisis. Yeah, I mean they tried to build up a bunch of that stuff in there where if you're trying to like have his origin last a long time, then you you have to build this conflict, and so I think they did a bunch of stuff, and I mean, they keep playing that stuff out over the season, so it's all developed and gets more nuance to it. But yeah, Comics Man, I've been watching season 1 of Luke Cage, and Marshall Ali is surprisingly in the major role there, and at the same time, he also won the Oscar. Sounds kind of odd to me. Is surprisingly in a major role there. Well, I mean, I don't remember the exact timeline on it, but I think it was before he won his Oscar. But I don't know where you are at the season, but everybody says he was a standout for his part in that season. So I don't want to elaborate too much on some stuff there, but um, maybe if you think about it, he's over the last 3 years, Oscars star in the movie that won Best Picture. But you go back to when they were casting season 1 of Luke Cage, it was before all that. I mean, he was well respected. He'd been in a bunch of stuff. But I mean, he's had a pretty fantastic few years since season 1 of Luke Cage. David Patterson, should I rent or buy The Wolf of Wall Street? I've actually never seen the whole thing. So every time I say that, people are like, what? And it's just one of those movies that, it's a long Scorsese movie that I obviously can't watch with my kids around. And it's not one my wife would be into either. She would hate it. And so then I have to find the right window that I'm in the mood to watch it and stay up after midnight or something like that to watch it. So it's one of those deals as to why I haven't seen it. But I'm leaning towards buying it since I like crime movies. I have liked all the Scorsese movies I've seen, and Leonardo DiCaprio is one of my favorite actors. Buy it. I mean, it seems like a pretty safe bet. It seems like one that you would like. I can't speak for having seen the whole thing, but I mean, it's like funny, or it's more fun. It's not like The Irishman. It's like high energy. I mean, coked out people doing wacky stuff. It's that kind of thing. It's a different type of Scorsese film, but I mean, it's Scorsese. WWE anime. Have you ever traveled outside the United States before? I've done a little bit here and there. So my grandma I mean, I live in Texas, and my grandma used to live in Arizona. So I've been to Mexico on the border cities a bunch at Reynosa, Juarez. I used to go to Juarez once a year with some trips that I did. Um, Montana. It's not Montana. I'm blanking on the name of it. And I don't remember the city that was across the border from where my grandma lived, but I used to go out there all the time. So Mexico a bunch of times. Went to Canada for 45 minutes. I was in New England, and we're like, hey, we're in, we're right. Canada's right there. Let's just go across the border, and we did, but it was French Canada, so we couldn't speak to anybody. We went into a gas station. We're like, oh crap, they don't speak English, so we left pretty quickly. And then I went to Hong Kong when I was in the 5th grade. Before I was born, my parents lived in Hong Kong and Singapore with my sister because of my dad's work. So I went to Hong Kong for a week in the 5th grade, it's like a cool memory that I still have these thoughts and these different things I went to, but how much better it would have been able to do that even if I was my sister, 4 years older, that I could remember it a lot better. Because when you're in the 5th grade, you just don't have the perspective to appreciate a lot of it. But I have a lot of memories of it still. And then I went to a couple of cruises into the Caribbean, so Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico. No, I didn't go to Puerto Rico. Jamaica, Costa Rica, Cayman Islands. Costa Rica, is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So, and it was back to back, the exact same cruise. Families are weird in the way it played out, but that happened. But just even, I know you're not great at critiquing actors, but which actor do you think gave the perfect? I mean, you set the question up and you kind of answered your own question. For who gave the perfect performance? Christian Bale in The Dark Knight or Hugh Jackman in Logan? Um, I, I think there's more in the Logan performance because it's dealing with death on a deeper level than The Dark Knight, but that's not really my thing to kind of address things like that. So, you knew the answer to your question when you asked it. I just don't. Here's someone that gave a performance that I have no criticism of, and here's another guy that gave another performance I have no criticisms of. Which one gave the perfect performance? Well, by definition, that both of them gave performance I don't really have any critiques of. Even the Batman Bale voice and stuff like that, I don't care about that stuff. Um, and so you're basically going which one goes to a deeper place, and I think there's some deeper moments in Logan. Gamerman, so is Smallville's Lex Luthor even a villain? I met Michael Rosenbaum 2 months ago, and he told me his is an anti-hero. Which one is true? Is he like Slade Wilson on Arrow? No, I mean, he views himself as the hero of his own story. He sees threats out in the world, and so he wants to do what he needs to do to stop the threats, and he thinks that he's the person that can save the day. But he does evil things in the process. He's manipulative. He's a liar. And I mean, as you go through the seasons, the division happens, and you see him go further and further, the split and stuff like that. And you see him turn more into the villain. I think, in particular, I think season 6 is where you start to see kind of him as this person that views himself as the hero, but also is doing very villainous things. So you'll start to see that pretty soon. I mean, obviously you've seen all the deceptions and stuff, but he does villainous things in pursuit of what he perceives as a good thing. When I made the comment about Screenwriter's book, I meant to put reading but not watching. The book is called Screenwriter's Troubleshooter: The Most Common Screenwriting Problems and How to Solve Them. No, that's not the one that I have next to me. I have this one right next to me. Let me screenshot that real quick. There. Right, just took a picture of that so I can remember it for later. But I'll look that one up later on because I'm always interested in stuff like that. Rich Review's thoughts on Darren Criss doing the voice of Superman for Superman Man of Tomorrow. I would have to know more about what exactly their plan is for this version. I mean, they have all these different takes on all this stuff that different continuities. So I have no thoughts on Darren Criss in general. I'm not a big Glee person. I had to look him up just now to make sure I was thinking of the right person, but seems like a weird choice, but I don't know what the angle is for their version. Virtue is, well, I think my Alamo Drafthouse and Violet Crown are nicer theaters than my Regal in my area. I mean, yeah, but they're it's a corporate chain versus smaller deals. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. Gamerman, my Twitter polls say Smallville season 4 is Lionel Luthor's best season. Is that true? And is this a character that is drawn out too far? I don't remember. Like I told you, I haven't watched through it in a very long time. So if you ask specifics, I'm not going to have an answer for you. I can talk general things, and if you mention a specific plot point about when he did this, I'll remember that. But if you say season 4, I don't remember what his plot line was for season 4 because I haven't watched it in 10 years. I think that his character maybe had one too many back and forths. Maybe they could have cut him one season sooner, but in general, his isn't one that gets too. I mean, the whole show, I think, once you get to seasons 4, 5, 6, right in that ballpark, they did 4 seasons that should have been like 2 seasons, and then they had the last 2 seasons or something. So like you should have just like squished 10 seasons into 7 seasons and you'd have a better show. So kind of everything in that middle part was probably a little bit dragged out where they were like, okay, so how long do we hold on to these characters and keep this going? And when do we do this? And all of it, I think, could have been squished together. Comics Man, do you think Daredevil from the TV show could blend in the MCU? No. No, I mean, he's not designed to be. The MCU is family entertainment, kind of with a light comedic tone. Everyone's a joker. And the Marvel Netflix shows just weren't that. They're designed for adults. They're not designed for broad family appeal. And so you have to redesign the character to transfer him over and move away from a bunch of what they established in the tone and the vibe and kind of this brooding Catholic, that sort of stuff. It's just not the tone at all of the MCU. So all this stuff will be like, oh, just move all these characters over into the MCU. I loved them on Marvel Netflix and I love the MCU. Let's just kind of combine them together. Like, well, you love them for different reasons. What you love about one isn't the reason you love about the other one. So I don't want them to just kind of squish everything together like that. David Patterson, my top 3 favorite performances is James McAvoy in Split, Al Pacino in Godfather Part 2, and Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men. Very cool. Majestic Demon, here's an idea for a video. 10 best or favorite Disney direct-to-video sequels. Disney direct-to-video to sequels fit in me and favorite. Those words don't entirely go together. Zeke, random question, but what's your favorite dessert? I'm an ice cream person. Just as simple as can be ice cream. And I like variety, so sometimes I'll have cookie dough ice cream. Other times I'll have vanilla, but I'll put chocolate and caramel on top of it, or whipped cream. And, I like the different options in there, but I change it up. But the ice cream is my answer. WWE anyway, I forgot to mention to include Warner Brothers. You forgot to mention Lionsgate. So what's your favorite film? I have no clue. I don't know off the top of my head what my favorite Lionsgate film would be. They're not as... Their brand's a little bit different. Warner Brothers, I don't know. I guess they have the Superman movies. The first Superman movie. Gamerman, so does Pete Ross ever return in the show? I did not like his exit in season 3. I felt out of nowhere. Probably. I'm sure he comes back for an episode here or there or something like that. But he's gone. Like his show is out of the like he comes back like for a cameo. I think that's it. But and you pretty quickly forget about his character, which kind of indicates why they wrote him out. But he was just for what the show they were making was just kind of an extra person that was there that didn't progress any of the stuff that they were trying to do. So yeah, he's gone. Majestic Demon. So I noticed something that stood out to me. Am I the only one who thinks that Dark Phoenix and Scarlet Witch are very similar? I mean, they have, crazy weird powers. In that sense, that's true. I mean, their personalities are very different. I mean, Dark Phoenix is, you're taking a hero and putting this force in her that takes over, where Scarlet Witch isn't really that. David President, I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's movie ever gets made, it has a good chance of being the best video game movie since the nature of the world and the franchise lends itself to a movie. I actually know almost nothing about Five Nights at Freddy's, but my kids know a little bit about it while not really knowing anything about it other than I don't even know. I mean, I don't know enough to even know when they're quoting it, but they're aware of it. Rich Reviews, will you be watching HBO's I Know This Much Is True, starring Mark Ruffalo as twins? The novel was in Oprah's book club. If it's based off something from Oprah's book club, probably not. Doesn't sound like something that would be right up my alley for a movie. Rich Reviews, thoughts on Disney Plus editing certain scenes from the Splash movie? It shows a girl's butt. And they edited her hair to cover her butt. Some people are just wildly offended at this, that they, edited a director's vision. Network television has been doing this for 40 years. They've been editing movies and showing them. So I think it's kind of weird that suddenly people are offended at something that was just entirely common practice in far more egregious fashions. Like when they were editing out curse words and stuff in Die Hard, like it's famous. You can look it up. Die Hard 2, when they edit out the yippee-ki-yay line, it says yippee-ki-yay Mr. Falcon. It's ridiculous stuff that actually compromises the movie. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, they didn't show this girl's butt on a Disney platform, so that How dare they? And then people be like, well, they'll show heads getting cut off, and then they showed Hulk's butt. And like, okay, maybe the system's not perfect, but we're not all gonna agree what isn't appropriate for their brand. That's for them to decide. And we all have different moral standards. So the idea that we're all gonna agree as to what you can and can't show, I mean, it's kind of it's like it's internet rage type stuff of like you point something out that seems weird to someone and then turns into this big deal. But if you play it out, it's like, well, yeah, obviously we don't all agree on everything. Gamerman, can you give me details on Jensen Ackles' character in season 4? I've heard he's another Lana love interest, but I don't want another Whitney Ford situation. No, I mean his isn't like that. I mean, there's a twist with his character. It's a lot more. It's more involved in the overall plot than just like love triangle. This guy's a jerk. It's not that. I think that he's like a coach or something like that. So I think there's some detail like that that makes it a little bit taboo. But he ties into some of the other things. Once again, it's been a long time since I watched it, so I'm not the expert to be able to give you the play by play of all of it for stuff that I watched a long time ago. But there's like a twist in where the kind of the plot goes, and without wanting to say, even to what I recall happening, I don't want to say it because I want you to watch it and not spoil things for you. David Patterson, did you like the Parks and Rec special? I haven't watched it. I'm sure I will at some point, but I haven't watched it. I don't rush to watch a lot of things. So, Comics Man, have you watched Bad Education? Nope. If I had, I probably would have reviewed it, but maybe not. I'm kind of intentionally not reviewing things for my reasons. Flinner, have you seen many Richard Linklater films? I think he's one of the most underrated directors. Loved Boyhood in the Before trilogy. I'm not quite sure how many his movies that I've seen. I've seen several, and some of the smaller ones, and then of course, School of Rock and stuff like that, and Slacker. But I'm not quite sure how many I've seen. I've never been one that like just went bananas for his stuff, but then maybe I just haven't seen enough of them to know. Zeke, I finally had the chance to watch El Camino last night with my older brother. I enjoyed it as an epilogue for Jesse, but the flashbacks took me out mainly because of Meth Damon. Yeah, I mean, I think they're. I wish they had if they had made it 6 months after the show ended, a year after the show ended. I think it would have kind of hit better with me as an epilogue, but because it was 7 years later. Jess Plemons does not look the same. I mean, he has gained a lot of weight and he has aged a lot. And so then it's distracting how different he looks from when he was in the last seasons of the show. And that's a big gigantic problem. But yeah, there's a lot of things I really liked about it, but just it felt like an epilogue that it as something that like, let's do a Breaking Bad movie years later, it feels underwhelming to me as that. But just to give me, I'm sorry if you've been asked this hundreds of times before, but did you watch the final episode of Clone Wars? Well, the final episode is Monday. I haven't watched yesterday's episode yet, so I haven't watched this one. I'll watch it tonight or tomorrow or something. I'm not quite sure when, but I mean, I'll watch them and then have a review. But there's one more episode on Monday, is my understanding, for May the 4th is when it closes out. Rich Reviews, the one complaint in HBO's Bad Education is if I were a parent, I would be more outraged. Then again, the fact that the two people embezzled still get their pensions and due to a loophole is crazy. There's no shortage of those infuriating things. Yeah, like that. Gamerman, I don't hate Lonnie yet. I don't hate Lonnie yet. Is a question mark. I don't know the answer to that question. Also, for some reason, Lana Lang is in Superman and Lois as a series regular, played by Manuel Triqui. I guess the show takes place in Smallville, so you can call Superman and Lois Smallville 2.0. Yeah, I don't know too much about that stuff, but like back in, I mean, Lana Lang is in Superman 3, actually played by Annette O'Toole. Ma Kent on Smallville was Lana Lang back in the 80s. So, she frequently appears in these different versions of these deals. Zach Pope must be disappointed that you've never seen The Wolf of Wall Street. It's entirely possible. If he's aware of that, I'm sure he's ridiculed me for it. Rich reviews. What channels do you watch? What channels do you watch that do more think pieces than reviews? Um, I don't know about think pieces. I don't know that I watch a lot of think pieces these days. That's just not the direction that I go with a lot of stuff. So sometimes there's little essays here and there, but there's not like channels that do stuff like that I dive into. I'm not really much of a consumer these days when it comes to like movie content because I spend so much time talking with you guys, responding to comments, and writing my own content that I just don't like when it's like, oh, I can watch something right now. What am I interested in doing? It's not more of what I'm already doing. So I don't do as much of that. Gamerman, I'm aware that Lana is a pretty hated character. I liked her in season 1, but I have mixed feelings since season 3, episode 7, the worst episode so far. And I do not want her back in season 4 when she had the perfect out. And the show will continue down that path of she gets more and more hated as it goes along because they have less and less reasons for her to be around, and so then yeah, she's around until I think season 4. I think is that when Lois comes in. I think Lois. I don't know where you're at. I think Lois comes in with season 4, and so then also you're like, wait, Lois is here, and we still have Lana, and you still do for like 4 more seasons. So just some weird things for that. Rich reviews. You should do a video about Star Trek episodes that were never made. It's probably too niche for my channel. My Star Trek content doesn't even do all that well. I reviewed the pilot of Picard and didn't really go anywhere on my channel, so I wouldn't think that something as niche as going into episodes that weren't made probably wouldn't connect with my current subscriber base. David Patterson, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is probably my top 10 favorite actors, but the movies he's in are either too niche or he doesn't get to be the main character to put him on the A-list. Yeah, that's seems to be the way his career's kind of played out, is that he's in a lot of great films, but the ones where he's normally the lead are pretty small for the most part, and directed by Ryan Johnson. And then when he's in bigger stuff, it's he's side roles. Gamer Man, which is better, Chloe Sullivan original or Felicity Smoke? Live action Oliver Queen love interest. I named my daughter Chloe, so I think my answer is pretty straightforward as to where I lean on that one. Yeah, Chloe is the one that I would pick, and her character has her ups and downs throughout the show, but it's not like Felicity where they ruin the character and she never comes back. There's plot lines where you're not supposed to like Chloe, but she always comes back and you like her again. Where Felicity was like, no, she just jumped the shark. And I have a daughter named Chloe, and there is absolutely a connection there. David Patterson, The Dark Knight and Inception are basically tied for my favorite movie of all time. If I had a gun to my head, I would say Dark Knight is my favorite movie of all time. Very cool, very cool. David Patterson, I'm trying to make a list of my all-time favorite movies I've seen ranked before it becomes too many to rank all at once. So far, I've only seen 339 movies. You've only seen 339 movies total? That doesn't sound right. Because I watched more movies than that last year. Granted, I do this full time, but that was just 1 year of my life pretty aggressively watching stuff. So I would guess that you've seen more movies than that. Gamerman, what are your thoughts on Arrow versus Lois Lane? I'm not the biggest fan of this one. I don't think we've seen enough. I haven't seen enough of her to have that big of an opinion. I don't recall how many episodes she's in, and she's kind of standing there as like, hey, I'm Lois Lane. So I don't even know if she's even had any full plot lines. I haven't seen this season of Supergirl, so I don't know what she did in there. So whenever she showed up last season and then in Crisis this year, that's all I've seen of her. So she doesn't make a big impact on me or anything like that, but I just don't have big, gigantic thoughts on it. So, I just need to see more. WWE Anime, can you do Batman villains ranked in final battles as well as Superman villains in final battles? I mean, I would just assume all of these things. I plan on doing a lot of that stuff. That's just kind of, as soon as something clicks and works, then I go, okay, what other franchise can I apply this to? So I'm working my way through a lot of the stuff. But like, I'm not going to watch a bunch of. In preparation for Wonder Woman, I'm going to watch all kinds of DC stuff for things related to that. Want to do all the videos associated with it. These would be some of those. So absolutely, that stuff is coming. I'm like, I would anticipate those things coming. There's no deadline. Don't tie me to anything like that, but absolutely, I would assume that those will happen. David Patterson, I know a lot of people want Idris Elba to be the next Bond, and I completely understand why. But in my opinion, he's too old to start in 3 or 4 years. Well, I think they all that Idris Elba stuff started itself like 8 years ago. So if you factor that into it, where people are coming from, that's what those rumors are. I don't know that as much right now. The conversations I just Elba, because I think he has aged out of it for same reason Daniel Craig probably shouldn't keep doing it. That getting too old, and so I think all that Idris Elba was the talk of the town back after. I mean, obviously after Spectre, when Daniel Craig was like, "I'd rather slit my wrists than do another one of these movies," but I think it's also the Idris Elba stuff is discussion, chatter, internet stuff that goes back a good little ways. Rich Reviews, thoughts on LeBron James doing Space Jam 2? We'll see what happens. I have to see a trailer of like how charismatic and how he works on camera, but why not? People seem to love that movie. It's a quirky, weird concept that seems like a safe bet, so sure, go for it. Gamerman, so for Daredevil, season 4 through 6 would be based on and around Bullseye. Seasons 5 and 6, I would have Elektra recast come back season 7 through 9 and be another big Daredevil villain. In season 10 would be Daredevil versus Kingpin as one last time. Cool. Jessica Jones season 1 is loosely based off the Alias graphic novel. After season 1 without Luke Cage and Kilgrave, the show went downhill. So I don't think there should be any more seasons of Jessica Jones. Luke Cage is a hard one, but the final season of Luke Cage would be shorter, and allies would be Colleen and Misty. Also on it would be Tilda trying to take it back, and Jessica Jones could have a role here too. So, yeah, I mean, especially like Luke Cage ended on a note where you're like, should not be the end of the show, and then tied with what they did at the end of Iron Fist, you just went, you guys already showed us what these next seasons are going to be. Why would you end here? Obviously, Daredevil ended on a note where you're like, oh, okay. Someone just reminded me I had a video go live right now, so I got to double check to make sure I didn't botch it. Always afraid that I botch these things. Okay. Just double checking. But yeah, so just so frustrating. But I don't know. I guess because you said the villains that you want for some of these seasons, but without knowing like a plot line, when you're like, hey, I want to go for 7 more seasons of Daredevil, and this one will have 2 seasons of Bullseye. It just seems like that's where you can stretch things out, because it's easy to say let's do 2 seasons of Bullseye, but that can mean a lot of different things in there. Majestic Demon, that's the one I guess just set me off. The Mummy just dropped. I know that what I'm doing after this stream. Gamerman, so I know Lois debuts in season 4. My problem is having her and Lana on the show together. Well, and it's that they do it for like a long time. Introducing them for a little bit, I think, creates an interesting dynamic. 4 seasons of it, you start going, why is Lana still here? What is going on here? And that's where you can see where the show ran into problems at a certain point in time, where they're like, we don't want to lose our main cast, but what are we doing with all these characters? So thanks for answering all my Smallville questions. Also, Mark Guggenheim confirmed Clark and Lois and the Smallville universe survived Crisis, so that was not erased. I don't even know how that fits in with what they told us, though. The whole point of Crisis and what they told us. I don't know if it adds up. I've only seen 330 movies because I'm only 15 years old, and I haven't had time to watch that many because of school. I just don't know that I believe it. I have a hard time believing that one. Like legitimately, I watched 400 movies last year. Granted, I do this full time, but every time I talk to you, you're like, "Hey, watch this movie, this movie, this movie," and you list off all these movies that you watched. So it's just hard for me to think that in reality, over the last 7 years, that there weren't more in there, especially where you have been more intentionally watching through stuff as of recently. Gamerman, now that Iron Fist is the worst Marvel show, I think it should at least have one more season with Colleen as the main character, not Danny. The show is trying to find Danny if that's interesting. I mean, season 2 was a lot better than season 1, so there could be something there. Alternate plan for Luke Cage and Iron Fist is a mini series of Luke and Danny and Misty Colleen team up series, and have them fix each other's problems. Could be good. Rich review. So will schools reopen, or will they be, or will they be open for the fall? Our schools are closed for the year. I mean, my kids are home until August, so my kids are it's all done, which is it's rough. It's tough. As much as you love your kids and like being around them and all that fun stuff, but um, we didn't set out to be homeschoolers, so it's like this thing where we're um, learning a new skill set and don't have a break from them, and we work from home, and so then I mean we're all here all the time. Um, so that's the quarantine, and even once we can go out and the pool's open, we all still work here and all that. So it's a lot of people in one house. Gamer Man, and for the Punisher, for the last 3 seasons, he would be a little more global. Use some ideas from 2004 movie, season 5, Frank Castle, back to New York City to find those responsible for his family's death. I don't know. I mean, didn't they already cover the people responsible for his family's death in Daredevil season 2? I think that would be rehashing if you start having him going after the people responsible for his family's death. I think you're losing the point of the Punisher if you do that, because he literally, that's what season 1 as well as other stuff was about. So I think you just have to have him punishing mobsters. You got to get to him punishing mobsters, like make that what your show is about. Matt G, Disney Star Wars TV crossovers are way better than Marvel TV. Marvel TV movie has attempts at crossovers. Way better than Marvel TV. I think I guess we're referring to Clone Wars and Mandalorian versus Agents of Shield. I think was what we're talking about. I'm not really sure. Since a little bit vague, but yeah, I don't like Agents of Shield very much, so I'm not going to defend the Marvel ones. All right, looks like we're closing out on last couple questions here. If it really bothers me that Christoph Waltz was hired to play Blofeld Inspector, and then they barely used him. Tip to every filmmaker: if you get Christoph Waltz, use him as much as possible. I mean, he's coming back, so they'll use him more. But Spectre, did have many problems. All right, see you next week. I haven't talked too much about Arrow, so I'll do that and a little bit more open about myself. See you. All right. Everybody, see you next Saturday. Be back same time, same idea, same everything. I appreciate all you. Bye.